Fasten your seatbelts for the realest Eagles and Sixers YouTuber! One who plays no clickbait and gets to the point! The myth, the legend, Nicky Stees! Come to my channel, you know the deal, yo boy, always keeps things real. I'm simply statue think they slate, dropping unrealistic mad 2K takes for the click. Even though cats like that get views closer to the milli, never hear me preach LeBron to Philly. Before you watch the Eagles all the way through the early 22, authentic talk, forget what others do. Come to my channel, you know the deal, yo boy, always keeps things real. The 24/7, 365 way, sports content for the reals to fill the day. Good morning, folks. It is a cloudy but still bearable day outside along the Jersey Shore in Atlantic County. We're getting ready for a storm coming, so everyone on the East Coast, be ready. It's going to be really windy Thursday, so be on the lookout for that. I'll get my time outside while I still have the chance to. You got David stopping by. It is 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, which means it's 3-Point Blitz time with Nicky Stees on my channel and the Hardcore Sports Network. And we just finished week 2 of the NFL preseason, so we're going to talk about it a little bit, go through the main events. I talked a little bit more about the Eagles in depth yesterday. Now today we're going to talk about the league as a whole. And I'm going to follow the format I did last year about football. We're going to dedicate the 3-Point Blitz mainly to league coverage, dedicate separate streams specifically for the Eagles where I can get more in depth with my team on those, and then spend the 3-Point Blitz to get more in depth about the big league headlines. Feel it's only fair, and that's what we're going to do here. And we're going to start off with the rant of the week. It's going to be NFL related about the Cincinnati Bengals. You guys already know, I'm sure, that Trey Hendrickson is on the trading block. It hasn't been traded yet, but it's pretty much almost a done deal that it's going to happen at some point. All signs are indicating that he will be traded. That taking the 4-time defensive tackle, Pro Bowler, the best player on the Cincinnati Bengals defense by far through the early Joe Burrow era. And now Hendrickson wants out. It seems like maybe he wants out. Maybe the Bengals don't want to compromise, which I feel is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the Bengals, now that's where I'm going to get into the rant here, because for the Cincinnati Bengals point of view, this is horrific for them because you saw how horrible their defense was last year. They were getting cooked left and right. They lost a lot of high-scoring games, one of them being to my team, the Philadelphia Eagles. And that ultimately cost them a lot of close games last year, including last year. I mean, they did start to win more games down the stretch late, but some too little too late. They gave up over 30 points to the Chargers, lost a high-scoring one, lost a shootout to the Steelers, 44-38, lost to my team, the Philadelphia Eagles, giving up over 30 points. And you saw the Cincinnati Bengals last year. Their defense was putrid. High-scoring loss to the Ravens by 1 point, 35-34, just to name a few of them. Lost 41-38 to the Ravens. That's 2 times they got jinxed by the Ravens in high-scoring affairs. They even lost week 1 to the Patriots. But mostly it was the defense that did them in last year. You take a few of those games, improve their defense, they probably get the 7th or 6th seed in that, maybe split with the Ravens possibly. It's a different story. The point being is the Bengals defense was their Achilles heel last year. So far, they're not look too confident that it's going to improve this year, particularly what I saw week 1 of the preseason with their starters against my Eagles backups. And now you're taking Trey Hendrickson, the best player on your defense by far, and now he's likely to go somewhere. And I got Art Koo stopping by in the chat. If not the Lions for Trey Hendrickson, I could see Washington And that's our Coos point. And to our Coos point, I on my channel, if you go check out on the Nikki Steve side, I got a pull up, as Arku commented. So on the Nikki Steve side, there's a poll question: where do you see Trey Hendrickson landing? I put a few potential options in there. One of my options was other comment in chat, which I'll get to that more in a second. First, I'm going to finish off my rant about the Bengals here. I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals, you're talking about an organization that for years, specifically throughout the 21st century, has struggled. They found their luck from time to time, had some playoff runs, have had some good talent come through, but it seems like they've always found a way to ruin it with their front office management. Keeping Marvin Lewis way beyond his expiration date as a coach, and letting him have control way too long. Even with Carson Palmer, you saw when he got injured, they could have re-signed John Kitna to be his backup, but they let him pass. They didn't really have a valuable backup for Palmer, and that came in handy 2008 and 2010 when he was out with injuries. You saw after the 2015 debacle in the wild card from the Steelers, the Bengals let the crew come back again. And it took a long time for them to recover from it. Arku says, I'm hearing from some folks they don't have the money. That may very well be the case, too, because the Bengals, you're talking about a team that's locked up with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins on the offensive side. They spend a lot investing into the offense, but they haven't really invested that well into the defense. But not only that, but it's also a combination of poor drafting. You also got Shamor Stewart, a raw prospect, coming on to a struggling Bengals defense. And this also has to do with poor management on the defensive side of the ball recent years as well. Not to mention doing a poor job managing their offensive line, which they've done for years, even the later Andy Dalton years. You remember the 2017 draft, they drafted John Ross over an offensive lineman when that's really what they needed going into that draft. But for years, they've struggled to find the right offensive lineman. So not to mention the Bengals, on the other hand, have issues on the offensive line. Now you're stuck in a position where, you're talking about the Lions. Arku's clarifying that the Lions, he doesn't think the Lions had the money to get Trey Hendrickson. I see where you're coming from. But yeah, back to what I was saying about the Bengals. We'll get more to that point in a minute about Arku's point about the teams Hendrickson could go to. Now for the Bengals, they're stuck in a position where their best guys go on the verge of leaving. What are they going to have on their defense? If you trade Trey Hendrickson, you're talking this is going to be the 2012 Saints defense all over again. This could be the 2012 Saints over a decade later all over again if you get rid of Trey Hendrickson. Because what are you going to have then? What? Trey Hendrickson's been the heart and soul of that Bengals defense. He's been a 4-time Pro Bowler. I'm going to take a look at his stats real quick. You've had last two seasons, 17 and a half sacks, respectively, 2024 and 2023. Had tackles ranging in the mid-40s both years. 2021, the year of the Super Run, had 14 sacks. Look, Trey Hendrickson has been the guy on that defense leading the way that's kept some stability on that defense. He's the main guy that carried that defense, especially last year when they were giving up over 30 points, sometimes 40 points on numerous occasions with the 17 and a half sacks, played a big role in keeping them, helping keep that defense at least somewhat stable. He keeps stability on the defensive line side of it. But now, if he's gone, you're in big trouble for the Bengals. And this is just poorly run front office, poor drafting on the defensive side of the ball, poor investing in free agency, not getting the right guys, not having the right guys to evaluate the defensive side of the ball. They went in on their offense, which is important, but you got to have some of those right pieces on defense as well. And the Bengals have not done that. Now, this is their chickens coming home to roost for it. But this is what happens when you got a poorly run franchise continuing to drop the ball. Now, as far as Trey Hendrickson goes, it's an interesting subject because there's some potential landing spots for him. Detroit Lions were proposed as one potential landing spot. However, their defense, to Arku's point, their budgets, not the budget doesn't put them in a favorable spot to land him. They're dealing with some salary cap restrictions. They also got, Hutchinson there. He's still under contract. And you still got a lot of Detroit's invested in a lot of players. I don't know about them. Now, maybe a team could be the Colts, maybe, because that would help up. You could put him there, maybe put Hendrickson, because then you'll also have him. You got several young edge players. You got Kwity Paye, Latu, and then you bring in Hendrickson. That would be nice right there. It could help out that Colts defense and bolster them a little bit. So there's a potential landing spot. Maybe the Chargers. And then, the teams, maybe the Chargers could use him. You got Khalil Mack. He's 34, is the best pass rusher, but he's not a spring chicken. You might need Hendrickson for the future for a few years. And especially being that they're in a tough division with Kansas City, you bring in a guy like Hendrickson, if you can make a deal for the Chargers, get a guy that's familiar with Mahomes, maybe help bolster that defensive line a little bit. You just brought back Keenan Allen to help at wide receiver. But also the Chargers are probably going to be looking for an offensive lineman on the free agent market or to pull a trade for an offensive lineman because their line's getting battered. So that might not be an ideal fit. They might be looking more immediately on offensive line. So Hendrickson might be a back thought. I mean, Washington could be a place possibly. I mean, maybe the Buccaneers could do so. That could help out, again, against teams like the Falcons. It's a lot of potential landing spots, too. Maybe Washington, they could actually afford to sign Hendrickson because they got a lot of short-term deals. Guys like Bobby Wagner, Von Miller, maybe they could bring him in to bolster their defensive line, which I, as an Eagles fan, don't want. But Washington could be a possibility. There's several different landing spots for Hendrickson in this scenario. Several spots that could put him in a better situation, possibly. I've seen the Seahawks floated around. Maybe him and DeMarcus Lawrence. That would be fun. I mean, at this point, Cruz says, I heard Carolina and Indy, but why? At this point, a lot of these different teams coming up, it's really just to get people talking. Because now that it's out there, everyone's going to be pitching out, oh, Hendrickson could be great here. I've even seen some people pitch Hendrickson to the Eagles. Point being is people are just throwing out his name to any team just to get a discussion going. And as Arcus said, you would want to send him to a contender, and Hendrickson himself would want to go there. Now, for the Bengals' point of view, they're probably not looking at a contender. They're going to look more at a team they could get something. Maybe they could even a team they could get something in return for. Maybe leverage in the draft. And that's possibly from the Bengals' point of view, but we'll have to see. I think Hendrickson himself, you definitely want to go to a contender if you're the player itself. Now, for the team, though, we're going to see what the Bengals do. But the Bengals haven't exactly been known for being the best run front office. But we're going to have to see how this plays out. It'll be interesting to see. But now we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk a little bit more about David Pius. Who are your sleeper teams this year? Sleeper teams, I could see the Falcons being a sleeper team in the NFC. Maybe they actually win the division, overtake the Bucs, and host a home playoff game, especially Michael Penix Jr. ends up playing up to his potential. I could see them having a good year this year. Out in the AFC, it's kind of tough around the AFC. I think maybe the Broncos, if Bo Nix improves, they could potentially, I don't know if they're necessarily going to win the division, but they could, especially with the Chargers having a battered offensive line. They're going to struggle offensively. Maybe the Broncos end up winning, getting the number 2 seed in the NFC West. I could see them doing something. Green Bay, to me, it all depends on what Jordan Love does. Jordan Love, while he's been solid, he hasn't taken that next step to being elite. He's like Brett Favre stat line wise without the 3 MVPs in the Super Bowl championship that Favre had. Or kind of like he's got that similar stat line of a lot of TDs to INTs without the conference championship runs or the playoff, the home playoff games that Josh Allen had, kind of. So I feel like Green Bay, Jordan Love's got to take that next step. He's got to calm down the turnovers and try to focus more on the touchdowns and the game-winning drives before I really consider Green Bay contenders. Now, Jordan Love's been solid, but I don't see him yet as that next face of the franchise unless he takes that next step. Just ask Gronk about Trey's trade package. We'll see about that. Now, moving right along, we're going to start with preseason week 2 winners. Now, I talked about this briefly yesterday, but I'm going to touch up on it again. We talked about Andrew Mukubu for the Philadelphia Eagles. In that first quarter, during that preseason game, Mukubu had a pick 6, and he had a fumble recovery right there. Browns have 5 QBs. Yep. And speaking of the Browns, it just broke yesterday. Browns are officially naming Joe Flacco the starter for week 1. Now, we'll see how long he is the starter for. And it'll be interesting because, in one hand, look, we remember Flacco had that magical run a few years back. Remember, they made it to the playoffs late in the season when Watson was injured. They signed Flacco off of waivers. But that was also might be been lightning in a bottle. I don't know if Flacco while he's going with a coach that he's familiar with, returning, I don't know if he'll be able to repeat that same effort now that it's been 2 years since. We'll have to see, though. But we'll see if Flacco holds up, and I'm sure at some point they'll turn the keys over to someone else. And speaking of QBs, it just broke out. Colts will start Daniel Jones week 1 for them, which will tie me into one of the losers for the preseason when I get a shot. Now, I'll get more on Daniel Jones in a minute. Well, actually, I'll get to that now. With Daniel Jones now getting the opportunity with the Colts, I feel like he's in a little bit better situation with Steichen, who, to his credit, without a real quarterback, has managed to keep the Colts competitive and has done better with a subpar supporting cast, has managed to make them relevant. He had on the cusp of the playoffs both seasons. Oh, I'm going to give Shane Steichen credit for what he's done. He's made the most of what he's had. And maybe for Daniel Jones, he's going in a better situation than he was with the Giants. Maybe he will. Maybe he'll play better, not necessarily be a star or anything, but he could do better in that situation. Maybe have a slight redemption arc. I mean, Sam Darnold, with a better team with the Vikings, had a redemption arc. And as David comments to agree, he agrees with me. Well, I do think for Daniel Jones, even as an Eagles fan, yeah, I like to laugh at Daniel Jones for what he did with the Giants, but there's a part of me that would like to see him redeem himself. Maybe he does have a decent run there. And we'll have to see, though. But speaking of news, I'm still on the subject real quickly before we get into the preseason. And we got some news from the Dolphins yesterday. They signed Matthew Judon. They send the edge rusher who was fresh off a stint with the Falcons. Now he's on short deal with the Miami Dolphins. Now he's going to have an opportunity to go against, as Yusuf pointed out, a division rival. He says, as a Pat fan, this hurts my soul. So now you got Judon's going to be competing against a division rival there a couple times. We're going to have to see how that one pans out. But with Matthew Judon, maybe we'll see what he does with the Dolphins. Kind of a prove-it deal. We saw last year he was on a 1-year deal with the Falcons. We'll see what he does with the Dolphins. It could give their pass rush some help, but it doesn't really move the needle for the Dolphins. There's still plenty of concerns. Can Tua stay healthy? How they do in December? How does McDaniel fare as coach? Is he on the hot seat? And we're speaking of the Dolphins, you got to think the coach has got to be on the hot seat. I mean, he's had 3 seasons. When healthy, the Dolphins team flashed some potential. Remember their first year, they started off hot, but then collapsed late in the season, lucky to make the playoffs. Year 2, Tua managed to stay healthy. They did make the playoffs, but it showed some weak points in December and got bounced by Kansas City. Last year, struggled with injuries, ultimately struggled in December on the road. Completely missed the playoffs. So far, McDaniel's been subpar with the Dolphins. And like I said, yes, they've been fun when fully healthy, but I don't know. Between Dylan Gabriel and Shador, I got to go with Shador out of the two. While I do think Shador is somewhat overrated, I think that so far Shador is more of kind of a middle tier quarterback from what I've seen. I don't think he's going to be an elite, but he does have some more potential than Dylan Gabriel to at least make some noise and do something in the league. So between the two of them, I'll go with Shador. He's got more upside. Even though, the guy is overrated to an extent. I feel like Shador was being so overhyped by the media because of his last name. He's low-key being underrated by the NFL to some degree. And here's the confirmation from yesterday that indeed Flacco will be the starter to start the season. Will he be able to keep recapture that magic from 2023? We'll see. Time will ultimately tell on that one. I mean, anything, people are just worried. People, especially me as an Eagles fan and Arku as a Cowboys fan, we'll be united laughing at the Giants if that happens. So we all have to wait and see on that one. Time will tell with that. Now, for the preseason, I'm going to get into my preseason winners. For this one, here's my criteria. For preseason, it's only preseason. I'm going to go with some potential winners in the long term. Who do I think could be better off in the long term? Who is there maybe a potential green flag for? That's how I'm basing it. So I'm going to start, like I say, Andrew Mukubu. And he showed some flashes at safety, some promise, the pick on Dylan Gabriel, the fumble recovery, showing great ball awareness as a player, to be able to snatch the interception, to be able to recover a fumble that initially, for those that saw the play, he was nowhere near the ball when it happened. It was a fumble, bot snap by Dylan Gabriel. Mukubu from the safety side saw the ball on the ground, instinctively moved in, took a dive, got the fumble, and made something of it. And then you got Wilson and Dart. I think it's pretty obvious Wilson's going to start. And to Jackson Dart, I'm going to get to that kind of second. Jackson Dart did have some nice statistical performance completion-wise, but I do think I'll get to it in a second. Well, with Jackson Dart, I think this is a perfect segue. A lot of people are going to crown Jackson Dart as a winner. And yes, he did complete a lot of passes. But with all due respect, I do see the highlights. Most of it was screen passes and checkdowns. Now, and this was against the Jets backouts. So he did have that one deep ball, but he had a few deep balls early on, like some of his first couple of passes that were being deflected. Mostly, for the most part, he stuck to short passes. And on the flip side, I'll look at Caleb Williams' body of work early against the Bills. Caleb Williams, I think, looked more impressive for the time he played in that week 2 than Jackson Dart did. Because Caleb Williams, he was actually throwing the ball past the first down marker. He had a touchdown pass. He was more efficient throwing the ball down the field. He even had a nice deep pass as well. I saw more out of Caleb Williams. I was more impressed with the throws he made than what Dart did. Not to say that Dart was bad at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if I had to choose a winner between Williams and Dart potentially, I'll say Caleb Williams, because especially now that he's with a new offensive coordinator, what I saw from that small sample size indicates there's potential for Caleb Williams to improve year 2. Now, I still think the Bears are going to have an uphill battle. They're in a tough division. If they can improve as a team, even get to 7 or 8 wins, Williams has a positive TD to INT ratio. They look competitive in most of their games. I think that's a big sign of improvement for the Chicago Bears. And what I saw with Caleb Williams for that sample size against Buffalo, he showed there's potential for it to get done. And I respect what he did. And the Giants, David says, I think the Giants will be improved. They could be competitive at least. And there's certainly a chance of that happening for sure. There's certainly a chance. Which time will tell how it plays out. And for Jackson Dart, I did see some green flags though on week 1 that, specifically open to feedback, but I still think obviously he's got to get Jackson Dart's got to play during the season. He's got to get some more experience under his belt before he can truly improve. You'll probably, when he does start, see some growing pains from him, similar to what we got from Eli's rookie year, where it's now maybe Jackson Dart even has a better rookie season than Eli flashes more potential, but that's all smoke and mirrors at this point. We still got to wait and see how it plays out. But I got Caleb Williams as a winner for his sample size over Jackson Dart. That doesn't mean that Dart necessarily bad, but I just saw a lot of screen passes and short passes, nothing that really caught my eye. But then I look at Caleb Williams, I see he flashed some more potential out of the two. So I'll pick Williams as a winner. And then you go to what I saw with the Patriots. I saw Trayvon Henderson. He had 4 carries. First couple carries he got stuffed, but he had a nice carry. He had 2 good carries, one for a first down and one for a touchdown. And then David's commenting on Gente for the Raiders. I'm actually going to check those highlights out real quick while you're doing at it. I'm not going to show the screen because I don't want to get a copyright strike, but I'm going to check out some of his highlights real quick. Let you know. I'm going to provide some commentary for what I think while we're still on that subject. Let's see what Ashton Gente did. So there's a 13-yard run. All right. It should be up in just a minute. All right, take a look. Gente's running up the middle, breaks a nice tackle. Ooh, a nice 13-yard run. I like the power. He's able to continue to move after contact. Had a nice truck, a nice little stiff arm. That was a nice little highlight there from Gente. Let's see what he did for the game. Take a look at his stat line for the game real quick. I'll get to your question in just a second. So I saw a nice little 13-yard run against the 49ers. Let's see, stats versus 49ers. So he had 7 attempts, 33 yards, and a touchdown. Had himself a solid performance. Like we said, we kind of felt like Ashton Gente, he's going to be the lead running back for them. And obviously, there's some potential there as well for Gente. If you guys want to throw out some other guys as well in the chat, feel free to do so. One minute, I'm going to switch on to the preseason losers. And again, this one mostly preseason winners and losers. It's going to be based on who I think has the potential to do something. Who I think could be affected long term. Who are there some red flags for? They have a decent offense, but their defense could be bad. Now, preseason week 2 losers. Again, I only put a handful of these together because preseason, we know anyone could have a good or bad preseason game, then come regular season, their performance doesn't matter. I think some potential losers here are the Dallas Cowboys backup, who struggled mightily in their preseason battle recently against the Ravens. They got, 33 yards in the first half total to 150-something to the Ravens. That's a big red flag there for the Cowboys. And I say so because the thing is, even though those mostly backups, if God forbid Dak gets hurt or someone key player on the offensive line gets hurt or one of their key defensive players get hurt, who aren't really looking all that promising this year, some of those backups that struggled could be slated to play. And that could be a huge red flag for the Cowboys season. So I feel they're a potential loser for that reason right there. Don't even get me started on it's because they're your rival. No, no, no. Well, actually, look at the stat line. Look at their performance. I'm saying is if they have to play, that's a potential red flag. And then you can say there's one loser. Another loser are the Los Angeles Chargers. You lost Rashawn Slater for the season. Now Mika Becton's dealing with injury concerns. Your offensive line is in trouble. And you remember Justin Herbert had a season-ending injury 2 seasons ago that led to that disastrous game against the Raiders on Thursday night and Brandon Staley getting fired. The point being is we know the Chargers without Justin Herbert could be in trouble. Now, on the flip side, though, I don't think it would be as bad as it was in 2023 if Herbert got hurt, because you still have Jim Harbaugh, who's a much better coach than Brandon Staley. You still got Trey Lance as a backup who could at least do better if, God forbid, that were to happen. But I still got the Chargers as losers because you already have a couple injuries to your offensive line. Your offensive line plays a key component in your offense. Quarterback's ability to throw the ball, get his feet set, without making reckless throws, without getting sacked, without giving up fumbles. It plays a key role in your running game, which Harbaugh is a big fan of over there. And for the Chargers, you try to bring in a veteran from the Raiders, but that doesn't really spark hope that's going to fill the gap for Slater. So I got them as losers for that right there because this can affect them significantly in the long term. And Anthony Richardson, from going 2 years ago around this time, if you had a poll question asking, hey, who do you think is going to be the rookie of the year for QBs of 2023, which I did myself. A lot of you said that voted on that said Anthony Richardson. He flashed some potential early on, but then he got injured. And then last year, he had more TDs than INTs, and now he's going to lose the starting job to Daniel Jones. Oh, that's a huge L for Anthony Richardson individually. For the Colts as a team, we don't know yet, but for Richardson as a player, big L. And those right there, that's my potential winners and losers from it. Like I said, I don't get too in-depth with it because I don't give too many potential winners and losers because anyone can have a good or bad preseason game. All of a sudden, come regular season, it's a different story. So I'm basing my potential winners and losers based off what I saw from them, who could potentially play well, who might struggle. But with that being said, that's all we're going to say for now about football. What I am going to do is take a short break. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the NBA schedule, mainly about like the Christmas Day games, opening games, Europe games, give you my thoughts on it. We'll be right back, take a quick break, and then we'll talk a little bit about the NBA. So NBA fans, stay tuned. All right, we're back, folks, after a short break. Now, going to talk a little bit about the NBA schedule to round this episode out. First, we're going to start with the Christmas Day games. We're going to talk about, and this is going to actually perfect segue. It's going to tie into both the NFL and NBA Christmas Day games. It's be perfect. So you got, in this one, you start off at 12. So we're going to start off with an enlarge the image for you guys. You start off 12 p.m. You got the Cavs versus the Knicks at Madison Square Garden. That could be a really good game. You got two contenders there in the East. I talked about this last week during my 1 week return on the Pick and Roll podcast with Blaze and Mitch. This could be a really good one here, folks, because here you are talking about two potential teams that could play in the conference finals, playing each other at MSG on Christmas Day. This has potential to be a better matchup than we got last year with the Spurs, with all due respect to them. Theirs could be a really good bet. That could be really good. Then you got 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You got the Dallas Cowboys, Washington Commanders, NFC East game that could have playoff implication, potentially division implications, most likely between the Eagles and Commanders at that point, but be a good game. Then you got 2:30. You got out west, the defending champ, OKC Thunder against the San Antonio Spurs. We'll see what that rejuvenized Spurs team does. Wembanyama could be back by then. Dylan Harper. Will De'Aaron Fox be there? Maybe we get to see their potential big three all play. And you get 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Minnesota Vikings versus Detroit Lions. That could have some implications on the NFC North. So there's a potential good game there. Then you got 5 p.m. Golden State Warriors versus Dallas Mavericks. You get to see what Steph Jimmy do there. And then you go against, going against the Dallas Mavericks. And then you get the Lakers versus the Rockets at 8 p.m. It's for the ratings buzz. You got LeBron on one team, Luka on the Lakers. Then you got KD on the Rockets, mainly a ratings buzz. But I would have loved to have seen Lakers versus Mavericks. That would have been an interesting one. And then Rockets versus Warriors personally, because especially doing a Lakers-Mavericks matchup on Christmas Day, that could have been huge for ratings. That whole story of Luka playing against his former team with his new home on Christmas Day, that would have been interesting. And then even Rockets and Warriors, you still could get you get KD on one side for the Rockets and Steph on the other side for the Warriors. That would still generate those casuals for ratings. But I guess the NBA's thinking they want to do LeBron versus KD, and especially being that you guys out west in LA, different time zone. That's more start of the evening for the West Coast folks. So that's probably why they did, because mostly East Coast folks will have settled in. They'll have had their dinner. They'll be watching the games by that most likely. So they want to get their two big stars in that prime time. And then you get 8:15, you get Broncos, Chiefs. That could have some playoff implications as well. Could be an interesting one. Then 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the late game, Denver Nuggets versus Minnesota Timberwolves. That could be a good matchup as well. So Christmas Day, particularly talking the NBA standpoint, has some opportunities for some good matchups, even the NFL ones as well, but particularly the NBA ones. They look like they could be interesting matchups. What do you think of the Rockets? I mean, the Rockets, obviously, they're going to have some potential now. They have the championship windows open with KD. It helps give them a boost, but it's still going to be an uphill battle to potentially compete for the finals, though. Now, as far as, you're going to notice a trend when I show some of these other games on the schedule for the big ones, that being like the primetime matchups, opening night. KD, you're going to get a lot of key matchups coming there. You're going to get a lot of key matchups. Rockets getting a lot of featured primetime games. And now, I'm going to take a look at some of the NBA on Prime schedule. You guys get a look, because now that the NBA is doing Amazon Prime, a lot of you guys are going to be interested in that. I think the Rockets, they're relevant. Yes, contenders. they're contenders, but I still don't know if still going to be interesting to see if they get it done because there's going to be a tough schedule out west. You still got to compete against the Rocket. You still got to compete the Rockets. You got to compete against the defending champion OKC Thunder. The T-Wolves are still going to be mixed. Nuggets still in the mix. If Cam Johnson does well as a number 2 role, maybe the Nuggets are back in contention. You're still going to have those teams to deal with out west. You still got potential. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens right there. And then you get the NBA Prime schedule opening night. You got Celtics and Knicks at 7:30. And then you got the T-Wolves and Lakers at 10 p.m. And then you got Halloween night, the Cup night. And then you got, and this is all Cup night, you got Celtics, Sixers, woohoo! Lakers, Grizzlies. Then you got, it's November 7th. You got Rockets, Spurs. An interesting matchup, potentially KD. If Wemby's back, KD versus Wemby. Pretty good for viewership. You got Warriors and Nuggets. Interesting matchup. Most of these games, you got the Heat versus the Knicks. You'll see how Norman Powell blends in with the Miami Heat, but that's not really like gripping me with anticipation. Then you got the Spurs and Warriors. Okay, maybe could be an interesting Wemby versus Steph there. Then you got Pacers and Cavs. We'll see what the Pacers do without Halliburton, how they fare in that one. Nuggets and Rockets. There's, Jokic versus KD. That's a good one. But you're starting to notice a trend. Rockets are getting more featured games now with KD. Sixers, Knicks, Philly versus New York. It'll always have that special feel that'll grip us in for that. Then you got OKC versus the T-Wolves. That should be a fun matchup. The day after Christmas, Celtics, Pacers. That's why the Celtics aren't playing Christmas Day, because they got a prime game the next day. Then you got the Clippers and Trailblazers. So the prime schedule, the Amazon Prime's mostly got a lot of the big market teams, a lot of the teams with a star player to try to get people to tune in. I haven't really been doing a lot of workout ones lately. Been mostly sticking with the sports ones as far as the content goes itself. And then there is one last thing I wanted to say. I looked up and Googled the European games. So who's going to be playing in Europe? And that's one. And we're going to show you the schedule right here. And then you got the NBA Berlin. So you got the Grizzlies versus the Magic on January 15th. And that's going to be in Berlin. I mean, I get Magic because of Franz Wagner. I'm trying to think the Grizzlies now. But then the Grizzlies, I don't know. I'm trying to think who's going to really, trying to think who's going to be that big draw for them there. And then you got the London game. You got the Magic versus the Grizzlies again. This time the Grizzlies are technically the home team. The Paris game, you got the Spurs versus the Pacers. Hey, you got Wemby there. I get that's good. You got to get the Spurs in that Paris game. That'll definitely draw a crowd, get people to tune in. And with basketball, unlike with football, you have more of an international audience. Because with football, soccer is the international game, not the NFL, not American football. Rockets will be third in the West, according to RQ. Who you got first and second there? I'm asking out of curiosity. You got the Grizzlies and Magic. I get the Berlin one because of Franz Wagner over in Germany. And for the London game, and then you got the Mexico City game. You got the Mavericks versus the Pistons. Kind of an interesting one. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, London, I get Paris, Germany, but I was trying to think of what are some potential other countries they could have tried to do a game at. mean, obviously, you could always try to get a China game in China. I mean, essentially, you could have done a game in China with the Clippers because we saw James Harden over in China a few weeks ago. He was mobbed by fans over there, so that could have been a potential opportunity. I thought they definitely should have gotten something in China, get a game overseas, but it's kind of tough because our president doesn't actually have the best relationship with China's president. They're in the middle of a tariff war. So that might be a reason they're not doing business over in China. But that's something else you got to consider. You guys don't get Arku's got his team and the Nuggets as the 1 and 2 seeds. And those are the games right there. But I think so. I mean, I thought there were a few countries that came to mind. China was one of them. I was thinking, I thought maybe try to get a game in Slovenia, have the Lakers be there so they can come see Luka. But I'm not really sure what the relationship is there between the two countries. I was thinking of some of, like I said, France, I could see, especially to that team. I was thinking maybe you could do a game in Canada, even though you already have the Raptors. Maybe do a game in Vancouver, especially being that you got now a lot of NBA players from Canada, especially in Vancouver. That could have drew a house for a one-night deal because Vancouver did once have a team, while they weren't that marketable and profitable to be a full NBA team. Being that Vancouver once had a team, you could draw some people in for a one-night game over in Vancouver. I thought that's something that the NBA should look into. Specifically, you could easily have done one of those Grizzlies games over in Vancouver for one night. Have them wear their Vancouver jerseys for that night. You could draw a solid crowd there just for a one-night deal. That would have been a potential option as well. Maybe get the Grizzlies versus Raptors over in Vancouver. Maybe try to draw the house, or maybe find another team, the star player from Canada. I thought that was a potential opportunity there on the NBA schedule. Opening night, though, you got the Rockets versus the Thunder. You get to see the defending champs Thunder. You get to see KD with his new team in prime time. Let's see how they fare. I like that one. And you got Warriors versus Lakers, which, like I said, if this were LeBron versus Steph a decade ago, it would have been more exciting. But now, in 2025, it's just trying to draw on the casuals. I'm not as excited about it. But hey, ultimately, we know schedules can always look exciting. We'll see what happens. And David thinks the Celtics could take a step back, especially being that this time around you're going to have you got no Tatum for a while. We're going to have to wait and see how that one pans out. But hey, for now, but that's really all I got for you guys for this episode. So this was a nice episode. Thanks everyone that tuned in, particularly Arku, David stopping by in the chat. You guys had a lot of fun with the stream, with you guys stopping by. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope make your day well. To everyone that tuned in, thank you. It was a lot of fun. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Yeah, I could see that. I could easily see that happening for sure. Playoff team, definitely. Title contender. I don't know. On paper, I'm not seeing it. I can agree with you on that one, Arku. Like I said, Arku, David, appreciate you stopping by the chat. All you guys always stop by the chat, make this stream more fun to do. So thank you again. I hope you enjoyed. And with that being said, guys, have a great rest of your day. I'm going to end the poll right here on my channel. Until next time, y'all, it's your boy, Nicky Stees. Going to be signing off. Have a great rest of your day. Maybe I'll drop a few YouTube shorts or two. Until then, peace.